Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Voice of Reason podcast. My name is Andy Van Beber, and joined with me, as always, is our co-host Travis Kirkendall, who is
Yes, sir.
he is with us, but he's not. He's actually. Can I say what you're doing?
Yeah, go ahead. I
He's
don't care.
he
Here, I'll
out.
even put on some video feed.
He's out walking the dog this evening after the poor guy was stayed up inside the house all day today. So you've got to burn off that. He's a Labrador, right? Or is he?
He's a Chesapeake Bay Retriever.
So if you've had Officer Michael Vincent, thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, nice.
But no, if you've had
Yeah, I
any
can't get
kind
my
of
video to work. I don't know what's going on.
if you've had any kind of retriever, you must realize that number one, they get bored super easy, and when they get bored, that's when they get unruly. So, and then you got to burn off just about every ounce of energy that you can possibly burn off. And Travis is doing
So,
the
like, to give you an idea on Chesapeakes and, like, kind of the difference, because I've had labs, and I grew up with two Chesapeakes. This is my own first one. To give you an idea how difficult these dogs are compared to your typical Labrador, my dad, his first Chesapeake he reached out to Mike Hicks, who trains dogs.
right.
He's like, hey, I'm kind of interested in. He wanted our first dog, Rusty, to be a hunting dog, and pretty much Mike Hicks refused to train him because he was a Chesapeake. If that tells you anything,
Yeah,
I think that's how my dad said it. So
yeah.
shout out Mike Hicks if you listen to this at all. But
Oh, I've owned. So I am currently on my third golden retriever, and every one of them has, when they were, good evening, Kane Evans. Every golden retriever that I have owned definitely has been a challenge, and this one in particular I have now is. But I've also been told that the wilder they are and the more strong-willed they are as a pup, the better they're going to be later on. So
100%,
yeah,
I agree with that.
yeah. So how was your weekend?
It was good. I had to work Saturday, which
Oh,
wasn't
all
fun,
that
but
overtime money, overtime
yeah,
money. Get it?
I had to make that OT money. And then Sunday, I took Lupo hiking with our trainers. Were hosting just like a group get together with the other clients, and there was I think there was five of us. We went to a place called Starved Rock State Park in here in Illinois. It's like 2 hours from
Yep.
me.
That's
Cool little place in Illinois. It's pretty neat. Have you
yeah,
been there? I'm sure you've been there.
yeah. I've been there before. I'm trying to. I've heard of it. I don't think I've been there now that I think. Where's is that north? That's south of you, right?
It's south of me. It's are you familiar with like Ottawa
Yeah. Okay.
or yeah. Okay, it's like
Yep.
right there,
Okay.
right along the Illinois River there.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
cool little place. Lupo had a great time. I had a fun time just seeing him happy. It was a really good time for sure.
I will admit this weekend was a bit of a challenge for me. I guess I can share this. I shared it with Sean and Travis.
Oh,
So
that's
this
right. Yeah.
last 6 months has been, for those of you who are longtime listeners, know that I was diagnosed with enlarged prostate back. So that would have been back in April. They did the exam and they took the samples. Nothing was cancerous, but they did say that, when they take your PSA level, which is your something antigen level, your normal level is between 1 and 4. And mine was at a 5.5, somewhere in there. But no cancers or anything like that. So they put me on medicine. I've been on medicine for 6 months. I've cut back on a lot of the different kinds of food I eat. I still drink a little soda here and there, but drink my water. So
Good job.
yeah, but so I was Friday night. Friday night I was at the end of my rope. I just had to it was busy, but the realization that this appointment was coming up kind of was on my mind, and so I Friday night, I just broke down, and my kids wanted to go to trunk or treat out at school, and my wife said, "I'll take them. Just spend some time with yourself. Just get in a good headspace." And I was just not to not to garner too much sympathy, but I had a good cry and just got it all out. And then Saturday, I drove for our cross country team. We qualified 3 kids for state, which was pretty cool. Sunday just kind of took the day morning off. Sunday night we had a trunk or treat at our church. We had over 600 kids, which was
Oh
out.
wow,
Yeah, it was overwhelming.
it's a good turnout. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, and then Monday. So then on so Monday morning I was supposed to be in at the lab at 7 a.m. I went in at 7 a.m. so I could draw my PSA levels, and then my doctor was gonna he was going to talk to me, and the plan was that if my numbers had elevated more, then they were going to get me in for an immediate MRI, and then we were going to go from there. And the MRI would have been today if it was that. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. But so he says, I'll call you back in a couple hours. We'll let you know. So 9:30 rolls around, nothing. 10:30, 11:30, and by this time I'm already just fearing the worst. And 12:30 he calls me and he says, "Well, I've got good news for you." I'm like, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, your level is at 1.41." And I was totally floored. And I recognize how good God is to me, and that He does take care of me. And so that's the only thing I can give credit to is just the healing power of God, and that was like an extreme load off my chest. So
Oh, sure, yeah.
yeah, but I will say to any of my friends, yeah, the guys are saying, my Officer Mike saying, you always drink a lot of water. V did when I was in school in your class, carried that big old water jug every day. And then Kane says he drinks a lot of water. Yes, you do have to fill my water jug up, Kane. Thank you for doing that. Um, yeah, but you know, guys, I will tell you this: guys who listen, I know we have a lot of guys who listen to our podcast at various times. I know we have a lot of guys who are over the age of 40 who listen. Get that test done. Get your
Yep.
PSAs checked. When you turn 40, get it checked. I mean, I was until I was 47 until I got mine checked. And if you're that's just it's one of those health things. If you catch I don't have prostate cancer, but I have a history of it in my family. If you get that checked out, and definitely keep up on men's health is something. Guys, I think we kind of Travis is the exception to the rule. He was like, "Oh, I did CrossFit tonight." Oh, Travis always makes me feel like a fat lazy slob. Whenever he texts me, "I'm at CrossFit tonight." I can just see
Well, no,
your
no,
muscle
it's not. I
your
think I know what you.
your muscle shirt. Travis is like, you just I just had this picture.
No, I don't
Oh,
think it's that. I think what you're trying to get at is some guys going to the doctor just seems like
yeah,
a.
yeah, it is.
I
It
don't know,
is.
like maybe this sounds ridiculous, but I think for some men it's like a sign of weakness for some
Yes,
reason. I think it's a
exactly right.
such a stupid mentality. Like, yeah, like
Y- You
go
know,
get your checkups.
and
Like,
it's that way for mental health. It's guys. I mean, guys, we need to do a show about that soon. I think about mental health, men's health, period, from top to bottom. I've got a friend who we can invite on, who's actually our family counselor, and we can have a good conversation about that sometimes. But
yeah, that'd
anyway,
be a good one.
that was my weekend. Tonight's show. If you saw the tagline tonight, does Yeezy equal crazy? And dear God, can this man open his mouth any wider and stick those feet any deeper into it down his throat? I was,
Right.
you know, Kanye West has always been he has always been a. Is it fair to say? I mean, controversial. He's always had the, I don't know if I even want to say target painted on his back. He's always been that guy who has always been, there's always something
He'll
discussed.
speak his mind. He's always
Yeah,
spoken his mind.
he's definitely always spoken his mind. And, Kanye West, and I won't, he's always, I've respected him as a, I respected him, he came out 2004. I did my research on him. So 2004, his first album was called College Dropout,
Yep.
and College Dropout was humongous. It shot, it was like number one or number two on the Billboard Hot 100. He was, he dominated with that, and he had some of, what was the name of that song? Oh gosh, a DJ Slow Jams.
College Dropout.
Yeah, off of College Dropout was that Slow Jam song, and his first major, he had everything. What Stronger? He had
Well,
Gold
Stronger.
Dig.
That was
That was
Graduation, which
yeah.
is
That was
one
on
of my
that was on
favorite rap albums of
Graduation.
all time.
Yep.
Brilliant album.
Yes. And he's done so many. He's done as a producer. He's produced some great albums. His latest album we were talking about, Donda, was, so supposedly Kanye found Jesus a couple of years ago. He is a he is a professed Christian. He take that for what it's worth, but he is, and he has even said that he's thought about running for president one day. And
Yep.
so Kanye has had a past track record of saying controversial things about various groups and various people. And so I want to post, and for those of you who are watching, you can see this. So this came out on October 13th. So this was 3 weeks ago. Yeah, 3 weeks ago. So this was on Twitter, and he says, "I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. The funny thing is, I actually can't be anti-Semitic because black people are actually Jews also. You guys have toyed with me and tried to blackball anyone who opposes your agenda," which was met with a lot of quick criticism. And to get into the mind of this guy is a journey, and not to be cynical, but it is literally a journey to get into what he's thinking. So throughout the course of the last 2 weeks, Kanye has been dropped. Who I had a list here. He has been.
So I know Adidas finally dropped him.
Adidas was the big
Whatever
one.
bank he was with, I guess, dropped his business accounts or something.
Yeah.
I forget what the extent of that one was. Those are the two I know of right now. I know there's a giant list.
I'm looking. I had it saved somewhere, and I can't find it now.
The man's stock's probably getting hurt right now for sure.
Well, so every company that's dropped Kanye. So here we go. Good. This is the good one. Goodwill. Not even Goodwill wants his Yeezys anymore. MSN reported on Friday that Goodwill is removing all Yeezy products from their store and will be picking through donations to remove Kanye-affiliated products in the future. Madame Tussauds Wax Museum is removing their figure of him. Peloton is removing Skechers, TJ Maxx.
They finally dropped them.
Christie's. Christie's auction house will no longer sell any of his private collection. Foot Locker, Adidas, Gap, Def Jam Records. So the label that carries some of his stuff, Balenciaga, Donda Sports. Who else? And a lot of people. Um, a lot of people are kind of distancing himself. Vogue magazine, J.P. Morgan Chase. That's the bank we were talking about. J.P. Morgan
Yep, there it
Chase.
is.
Um, let's see, the UTA, whatever, and the rapper's own talent agency. His agents, CAA, cut ties with him. So
Jeez.
so when you go down that black hole and the history of what his whole thing has been about. So he appears. So he makes this statement, and a lot of it was. It actually goes back to on. So on October the 6th, and this is will come as no surprise to some
You're
people.
gone.
Kanye joins Tucker Carlson. Now there's two guys you want to get in a room together, right there.
Ooh, yeah.
Kanye West and Tucker Carlson. And on Tucker Carlson's show, he was wearing a White Lives Matter shirt as
That's
part
right. I
of
remember
the
that.
yeah. And so he some and so they did the interview, a lot of which was not. So it was a I guess it was a pre-interview, or it was a pre-recorded interview, and so a lot of it didn't make it on to Fox that night. So when it gets to be where, so obviously Kanye probably delved over into the ultra conservative field, which even Fox is like, okay, we're not going to broadcast that. But he
Yeah.
had, yeah, so he had made a series of offensive and he had a lot of conspiracy theory claims out there. He said, and this is something that we'll be getting into a little bit more here in a little bit. But he said that Jews are actually black people, saying that when he refers, and I'll just read this quote, that when he refers to Jews, he means the 12 lost tribes of Judah, the blood of Christ, who the people known as the race black really are black. And he goes on to claim that Planned Parenthood was the product of a collaboration between the KKK and Margaret Sanger to help control the Jew, i.e., black population, to control the Jew population, i.e., black. He also stated that it is impossible for him to be fairly described as anti-Semitic because as a black person he is actually a Jew. It gets better. Kanye also told Carlson that he believed Jared Kushner also arranged peace agreements between Arab nations and Israel to make money. And he also stated that he wished his children had learned about Hanukkah instead of a complicated Kwanzaa because Hanukkah would at least come with some financial engineering. And
Oh
so
yeah. Don't.
and so then he takes it up the next notch. The next day then he puts these screenshots of text messages insinuating that Jews are using their control over his peers in the music industry to intimidate him, and he said that no one can threaten or influence me. Of course, that had been taken down. And he said that Jewish people toyed with him and they tried to blackball anyone who opposes their agenda. And then that's the whole DEFCON 3 thing. And let's just unpack that for a moment. Let's unpack that little just that much right there. Travis,
Where to start?
well, I mean,
I would
anti-sim.
say,
Go ahead.
okay. So I was kind of familiar with what the stuff that had been going on with Kanye, and then I watched the Lex Friedman had him on, and if you really want to know like a good interview of like what the hell's going on with Kanye, I think that is a great reference. Um, he brings that point up of blaming, uh, saying that the Jews caused all the things that you listed above. He blames a group of people, right? And what I liked about Lex's response to it, and this was, I would agree with Lex when he pushed him on this. He's like, you can't call out a group of people. That's exactly what Hitler did. You go out. You instead, he's like you man up and you go after the individuals. You call out the individuals, not the people of just because they're
Right.
Jewish, you don't say Jewish people, Jewish media. He's like that's bullshit. You go after the individuals that you have a problem with, and you don't go after them based off of their religion or other or whatever they are. Because again, I mean, you're calling out a lot of people that had nothing to do with whatever his problem is, and it really is like a throwback to 1930 Germany. Like some of his statements are absolutely ridiculous.
Well, and so right now I'm going on to our. Let's see here. I'm
Hey,
going to.
real quick, what was the poll question? I'm kind of curious what people's sentiments were on this. Did you put a poll question for
No,
this
I
one?
actually I didn't know where we were going with this, so I didn't quite. I asked something about good old Joe, but
Well,
no,
if you're listening, comment
yeah.
below.
Please
Like,
comment what your guys'
get some
thoughts are
feedback.
of. But I just posted on our Facebook page. Um, on our Facebook page, I posted the link. So there, if you go to facebook.com/, Voice of Reason podcast 2021, you can see there I included a this is the link that Travis shared with us. So you go to that page, you'll see the link, and it'll connect you right to the Lex Friedman and tell Lex Friedman. So Lex Friedman is a what line? He's actually an engineer, right? Travis.
Yeah, he works on robotics for MIT.
And so he's very and he's Jewish, and he's a very
Correct.
intelligent. I've watched. Travis has sent me a lot of things about Lex Friedman. Is very interesting to watch, and just to give you,
Oh, he does great
yeah,
interviews
and
for sure.
just to give you some context, this is a 2.5 hour interview. So Lex Friedman,
And
and to be
by
on,
all means, Lex could have ended it an hour in. Like
no, yeah,
Kanye was being very disrespectful the whole time to
and
him.
so and well, first of all, so Travis sends it to me because he starts out the whole thing about saying how the study of history is subjective, and how the only thing that people need to be learning in school is engineering and all this other stuff. And I'm just like
But but
he,
it kind of that statement totally contradicts himself because he says that well history doesn't matter and we shouldn't focus on history, and yet
but yet he makes all
like
of
we
the
always preach, yes, history repeats itself. And here he is making these claims of Jewish media and the Jews are doing this, the Jews are doing that. And again, I'll make the reference back to 1930. Like that's exactly why we should know history. That's exactly why we should study these things so that hopefully we can learn from these mistakes before and not
well,
repeat them.
and so when you make comments like this, you are you're going to open yourself up to credit. And see, that was the other thing. And I will admit, I did not. I told Travis I could not stomach the interview. I made it through about 30 minutes.
It's a hard listen.
It is a very hard listen, and I made
And
it
it's
through.
not only because of the statements he makes, it's just Kanye's mind is just all over the place. Like the guy can't stay on one subject for longer than a minute, and he's just
Well,
me. I was listening to it with a coworker on during our drives to work, and there was like so many times like, wait, what is he talking about right now? Like it was just so all over the place.
yeah. And Mike Vincent says, "How do you proclaim yourself as a Christian follower of Christ and then do something like he's done, releasing the statement and saying what he said?" And to me, Mike, this is so. And it's interesting that we opened up and we made a comment about mental health. I don't know much about Kanye's, I mean, his childhood. I don't know anything about his background or where where I don't even know where he's from.
According to the media, apparently he's has bipolar disorder, which he says is not true.
I, you
But
know,
take that for what it's worth.
well, there's a lot of things that are going on. There are so many layers of things that are going on with what he's saying. Because okay, so on one hand, I remember when he had his conversion experience, when he claimed that he converted to Christianity and he asked Jesus Christ into his life as a savior. And and it's bad. It's probably a bad thing of me, but I get very skeptical when a high profile person, I don't care if it's a politician, a musician, to me, the proof is going to be in the pudding. Okay. I'm not going to judge anybody. I'm not going to judge, but scripture itself says, by your fruits you shall know them. Okay. And so I'm looking at the fruits. I look at people who have converted to Christianity and they display stuff in their daily walk. I'll give you a good example. And the guy who doesn't flaunt his faith but came to Christianity about 10 years ago was Denzel Washington. Denzel,
Interesting.
and the guy lives out his faith. The lead guitarist for Korn of all things, Brian Welch, professed Christian, and he's released many books and out and. But then I said, so Kanye, I'm like, okay, well, let's dig through this, and so so this album Donda was actually his second Christian album that he released, and
Yeah.
whoa, you know, so
Brett, I just want to say my issue with that album isn't that it's a Christian album. It's just
oh,
I didn't like the music.
no, it
It
was
was
you're just like, and it's really like you said, to go through that interview, to go through. I mean, and his music is all over the place. His thoughts are all over the place. If you can sit there and you can, so what I did was, so this afternoon what I did was I listened to a 5 minute blurb I listened to, and this is honestly what I did. I listened as long as I could listen. Okay, I'm tired of this crap. Okay, so I would skip ahead 10 minutes, listen to another 5 minutes. Oh, wow. And he would, and in those 5 minute segments, every time that I skipped, he was totally in a different place. And it was just, and a lot of this same stuff kept on coming up. Okay. So I want to get back to this thing though. And Travis, you can, because I know I actually came up upon some of the stuff in the Friedman interview that he covered some of this stuff. So this whole statement about, he's like, well, I'm not anti-Semitic because I'm a Jew myself. Okay. So doing a little digging underneath this. Okay. So there is a movement out there. And for some people, this may be total yawn stuff to you, but it's out there. Okay, so, and I was not aware of this, and I consider myself to be a friend of the Jewish people, and and I believe in Israel and supporting Israel and everything. But there is this group called the Black Hebrew Israelite Movement. Okay, so these people, they reject Judaism and are not the same as. So they're not the same as Jews who are black or Jews who are of color. Okay, they refer to themselves as the true Jews to emphasize this is our distinction. We are the true Jews. Okay, the belief calls into question whether or not modern Jews, of whom I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm sure it's like a minority of them are people of color, but they have the modern Jews have no connection, if any, historical relationship with the ancient Israelites described in the Bible. Okay, so this group, the BHI, the Black Hebrew Movement, these guys are openly anti-Semitic. They're extremists. They state explicitly that members of the mainstream Jewish community, they're imposters. They're fake Jews. They use trickery. They use different tactics to convince the world that they are the legitimate children of Israel. They're trying to steal the heritage of the black people, the religious heritage, and many proponent, they're this whole fake Jew thing, that the modern Jews are a part of a global conspiracy to oppress non-Jews. Okay. You can't make this stuff up. You cannot make this stuff up to say we're the real Jews because
So, and let me just say, Kanye hasn't officially come out and said he's part of this
no,
group,
he
but if
has
you listen
not.
to his language, it is on par with exactly everything you just described.
Yes, yeah,
Like it's exactly the ideology is the exact same. So if you put two and two together, I would assume that's kind of the direction he's taken with what he's speaking.
yeah, and because he says, you go back to that tweet. If you go, bring this tweet back up again. You go to this tweet. You got, the funny thing is, I can't actually be anti Semitic because black people are actually Jews also. Okay? So that statement in and of itself is highly tied in with with the whole BHI movement. Okay?
And he repeats it a lot. I mean, he
He,
says it
and he
throughout that interview. He says it through other interviews.
and he
He's
constantly and if you notice in Travis in that interview, he kept on making the reference to my people.
yes.
My He didn't say African Americans. He said my people. And I didn't like I said, I didn't listen. Did he ever come out and specifically say who my people were?
I think he does. I think he refers to the black community once or twice. Especially there was one part towards the end when he was saying he was talking along the lines like my people are sick,
Yes, and that I
and he
caught
was
that
making the
part. Yep.
comment about how he's like I go to like a Walmart and I see my people are overweight. The Jewish media idolizes my people, like overweight people, and tells my people that that's who they should be. Like he makes statements like that, and it was something along those lines.
Yeah,
But I want to say that that was the only time I think he specifically. Well, he says it again too when he makes the comparison of the Holocaust to the 20 million. Was it 20 million people, or did he say 20 million African American uh, children die from abortion every
20
year
million,
from Planned Parenthood?
20 million, 20 million.
Now was he? But didn't he say that was African American, or did he
Yes,
say that
he
was?
said that was an.
Yeah.
So he's saying
Okay.
that
So
right, African American people are being targeted by plant. This whole thing. The
I
whole
want to say
thing.
those were the two times that ring in my mind when you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, because Planned Parenthood was created as part of an effort to control or harm whatever you want to say the black Jew population, and this has been something, and that's not something that originated with Kanye. Okay, that has been put out. The Nation of Islam, which is a black extremist black pride movement has been led by the last close to 40 years by a guy by the name of Louis Farrakhan. Okay, Louis Farrakhan. And I mean, this has been a thing that they have said, and that the U.S. government and Jewish people have collaborated on a depopulation agenda. Which this was another thing that I picked up on, and this was another 5 minutes that I listened to. So at one point in this interview, Kanye actually comes out and he makes this statement about how the CIA had
Oh, that's
introduced
right.
crack cocaine into the black community. That the CIA was behind and that the CIA targets talented black leadership and draws them away from the African American quote unquote Jewish culture. And he's wrangling in the CIA with this, and that's why you see so many single black mothers raising black children, and they're left to be poor and destitute in these situations on purpose. So it's kind of like almost like a natural selection thing that only the strong are going to survive. And by this time, I am totally. And I want to I want to just call the guy on the phone and say, "Are you listening to yourself talk right now?"
Uh,
There's,
I I just throughout that interview and multiple others, like I just keep asking myself, like, what world does this guy live in?
Yeah.
Like, he even, and I don't want to get too far off the topic, but I mean, he says he makes claims of like he calls himself like the greatest designer of all
Yeah.
time.
Yes.
Like, it just he really it's funny in the beginning of the Lex Friedman interview specifically. He says like he tries to humble himself, saying like, "Oh, I don't care about money. I don't care about these kind of things," and yet he goes on to bring up how much money he's made like multiple times throughout the interview, and then he calls himself the greatest designer of all time, the greatest black leader of all time, and like just other ridiculous claims.
So,
I don't know. He was
so,
just
so the next part of this that I want to move into then, Travis, and you and I had kind of discussed this beforehand.
right.
So moving forward, so he's making the claim of censorship, that he's being, he's obviously he's not on Twitter anymore. He's been yanked by pretty much everybody. He's been yanked off just about every. I don't know what's the Republican, the Donald Trump site. I can't think of what it's called right now. But he's,
Uh,
Parlor. I don't know if he's on
that's
Parlor.
yeah. He is. I think he didn't he buy Parler or he's got ownership in it, right?
Yeah, I'm not aware of that. But
They talked about that in the show too. I don't know the exact
so
thing
there's
with
a
it though.
there's a concept that's out there, and I've discussed this many times on this podcast, but I want to revisit this issue that's called relative rights. Okay, my dad had this saying that my rights end where your nose begins. Okay, I can have the right. I always used to illustrate this with my kids in my classes. I have the right to crazy hands. I have the right to walk around and swing my crazy hands around until my hand comes right to the top of your head. That's where my
Right.
right to crazy hands end. I have the right to freedom of speech. In one of the first freedom of speech cases that was ever heard, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes said just because you have the right to freedom of speech does not give you the right to go into a crowded theater and yell the word fire. Why not? Why what are you doing when you are infringing, there's so many things that are opening up here because you're now infringing upon someone else's right to safety, someone else's right to, you know, enjoy their
Yeah,
lifestyle.
just a peaceful evening.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I come out and I make a statement that says, I can talk about my friend Travis. I can talk about my friend Travis and how much of a great student he was and a great person he was because he is a great person. He's a hardworking man, a great husband. I hope one day he's going to be a great father. And but if I go out there and I make a statement that says, well, Travis is really mean. He goes home and he beats up his wife and he kicks his dog and hits his dog with a 2x4. Is that my right of freedom of speech to say that? It I can't. Why can't I say that about you, Travis? Because that's 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 slander. I
What's
can't.
the was it defamation or is that the
Defamation
term for it? Or
defamation of character.
defamation. God,
So you
forgive me.
cannot make a defamatory comment about someone else. You can't make. And so what Kanye is doing, and I've seen this. I've seen this throughout my years just as a human being. Growing up in the years following and into the civil rights movement and into. I mean, I remember hearing stories growing up, at, of Black Panther movements and run-ins that my family, when they were on vacation, they got lost in downtown St. Louis and they ran into a Black Panther group who made a human chain of, and all these horror stories about. But when it comes to you can't. Just all these terrible things. People get placed in these situations They get placed in a traumatic event. They get placed in a bad place. And then we make general. I think this is where a lot of racism comes in. I think this is where a lot of hatred and misunderstanding comes in because we have an incorrect, what's the word I want to say, an incorrect frame of mind put into our heads about another group of people based upon an experience that we've had with a small subgroup of that people.
Yes, I would
Okay.
100% agree with that.
Case in point, I had a student, and this student was at my first school. It wasn't at Clopton, but it was at the first school that I taught at, and he ran a lawn care business with his brother. Okay, and he had a government contract to do down in southeast Missouri in the Boot Heel. There's some dirt poor areas down there. And so they had a contract with the government to do some of the subsidized housing, mow and do the lawn upkeep. And I had this kid as a senior, and he said all the N word, all them they're just lazy and all they do is sit around, collect welfare, and smoke pot. And I remember this kid's name. I was like, Rusty. I said, what are you basing that upon? Well, when I was down there in it was Malden, Missouri. I was down there in Malden. I was mowing the yards, and they were out there smoking pot in the middle of a weekday, and they're all that way. And I was like, okay, so you're basing your entire experience upon your encounter with one small microcosm of a population of over hundreds of thousands in the United
That's
States.
the problem. A lot of people with that mindset, they lack that perspective.
Right.
They have that small town, small world mentality.
So, we have all had a negative experience somewhere along the line with people of various groups, whether it's ethnic group, socioeconomic, or whether it's, we have all, every one of you who are listening, who are watching live, and who have listened to our podcast and are going to listen on Spotify tomorrow, you have all had that run-in with that group of people who have challenged your mode of thinking. Okay, so now, does that give me the right, because I had a negative experience with that one group of people, is that going to give me the right to classify a whole group of people into a little tiny box? You can't.
That's
You can't. Okay, so when you make statements like that, this is what, okay, if there is such a, I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in being able to state your opinion. But when your opinion is based upon incorrect assumptions, you need to be held responsible for what you say.
Not only that, if you're going to make those assumptions and you're going to publicly state them, where's your facts?
Mm-hmm.
Where's your data? You got to have something to back up. Those are some pretty damn bold claims.
Well,
I didn't see any data from him other than the 20 million, the statement he made. But then again, like, okay, where'd you get that data from? There wasn't an answer.
Well,
But
I want to know. There's no historical basis. There's no historical basis. When you look at the history, and that was the other thing he said. We said, well, history's written by the winners about the losers. Okay. And he said history is purely subjective. You can't make, there are historical facts that exist. Is there bias in history? Yes, of course there
absolutely.
is. History is written about the losers by the winners. And, I will agree to that statement to a point. But the goal of any, one of the first historians was the Greek historian Herodotus. Herodotus, one of the things that he targeted when he wrote the first history of Greek society back in like 300s BC. Okay, he makes these statements, and one of the things that he noted is that bias. And whenever people would say, okay, well, and even when you look at the Bible, people say, oh, you can't. It was just a bunch of guys who got together. And when you look at just for an example, when you look at the book of Luke in the Bible, Luke was a doctor. And he, according to his own personal notes that were archived, he interviewed over 500 different people, okay, who had encountered and witnessed, and he talked to Roman soldiers and Roman leaders. When you talk to people about what happened at the assassination of John F. Kennedy, there were literally thousands of people along that parade route who could tell you every detail of every turn along the way. Okay, so my point is this: there's certain things about historical fact that are rock solid. You cannot refute. I could do a whole show on the whole 9/11 thing. The 9/11 conspiracy. Oh, it was a setup. Okay, and but until with what Kanye says about the Jewish people, and where's your historical fact? Give me historical studies. Give me any DNA scientific studies. I mean, you can go to these tombs in Israel. You can go to these thousands of year old tombs. Draw DNA from any of those guys, bring that back, and do a DNA sample and see what you come up with. You don't even have to be historical. Let's be purely scientific. Draw the DNA from they can get DNA from just about anything, right?
Yeah, pretty much these days.
So, I don't know. I'm rambling on here, but to me, you have to be held accountable for what you say. You cannot just make these statements. Oh, we're the true Jews. Okay, is that your opinion or is that fact?
I think my biggest issue with his statements, obviously, if you listen to any of his interviews, the guy's mad. Like, he's had whatever experiences he's had in the music industry and his business deals, whatever, he feels like he got burned, he's been wronged, and he's very angry.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, if you're going to call people out, I'll go back to what Lex challenged him on. You don't call out a group of people, a religious group. You don't blame them. You man up and you go after the individuals. Call out the individuals who you believe that caused these problems to you, that you claim caused these problems to you, and you go after them. And you don't go after them based off their religion. You go after them based off of their actions and what they did apparently to you.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, he's just blatantly going out and blaming a whole group of people. And that's where I think he crossed the line, of course. I think had he, like I said, taken that approach of calling out these individuals, sure, it would have been controversial. It would have made headlines. But I don't think he wouldn't have lost all his damn sponsorships. I don't think. Maybe one or two of them, depending on who the sponsorships were, and if the people he called out were like the owners of those companies.
Mm-hmm.
But had he just called out the individuals, I think that would have saved him. But again, I don't know. There's a lot of unanswered questions with his claims.
Well, and Lex Friedman, he made some statements along the line that's like, you're dancing on the line of 1930s Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
So that was another part that I skipped to. And when he said that, Kanye it was almost like Kanye was taken aback. Well, how, that's past, that goes back to his past as prologue. That's, you can't live in the past.
Yeah, he says that. He's like, well, you can't live in the past. He's like, that's why we don't teach history. And it's like, no, that's exactly why
we teach history. When you look at Adolf Hitler, the life of Adolf Hitler and the connections, and there are tons of conspiracy theories out there that tie Adolf Hitler to his hatred of Jews. And a lot of them, and I won't go into detail, but a lot of them deal with negative experiences that he had in his early life with people of the Jewish faith. Okay, the only one that was, and I can't say with 100% confirmed, but he tried for the Vienna Art School twice. Okay, he
Yep.
tried to get into the Vienna Art School twice. Both times he is refused. He's actually he was a terrible artist. But the majority of the board of regents of that Vienna Art School were, guess what, Jewish. Okay, so he's going to base his experience about so the whole, the whole, and he was a corporal in World War One. He was a corporal in World War One, and he believes that the German response to the West, the Germans could have won World War One, but there were Jews within the European banking system and they were the ones behind the weak German government. Okay, fast forward to what Kanye says. Kanye makes these same, like you said, about the recording industry. About what was the I also highlight what was it he said Jewish people are disproportionately powerful, that they control the media, including the music industry. And he this idea has been present in with other black performers and activists in the past, and it's a common talking point with a lot of these. If you listen to some of these extremist groups, this is a common talking point. Well, Jews are they're controlling the media, they're controlling, you know. Last time I checked, you know, Death Row Records was started by Dr. Dre. Last time I checked.
So
Okay.
let's say this for instance. Say in fact many of the owners and leaders of these media companies are in fact Jewish. Let's play with the claims that he makes and say they are. Okay. The majority of these media owners are Jewish. Does that mean that the Jewish media, it's the Jewish is it the Jewish people then that's the problem, or is it those individuals? I keep going back to that point because it's not just Kanye. It's like I think you mentioned this earlier. We have such a habit of category throwing everybody into this category due to ignorance, lack of perspective, you name it. And I think it's become such a big thing now because he's made these statements. But I think this kind of thing happens quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and it's repeated itself throughout history, obviously.
It has.
And that's what's so frustrating. And then the whole idea of, well, racism's dead. When we think of
No.
racism, we always think of, white and black,
White and
and it's
black, we
so
don't.
much more than that. And this is a great example of it. I mean, these are just even like, man, some people don't talk about it. Latin America. You want to talk about
Yes.
some racism?
Yes.
My God.
Pike County,
Like my
Missouri
wife
is,
told me about like
yeah.
some of the way these people think of each other. Like blows my mind. People have no clue.
Well,
People have no clue, man.
I think, and I made a kind of a comment to this regard last week. Everybody everybody needs to have. I don't want to use the term like this, but everybody needs a boogeyman to. There's a source for my problem, and it's not. And people will say it's not me. It's not me. It's X or it's Y. We do it on the bigger stage when we say, okay, the problem with America is the Republicans. The problem with America is the Democrats. And then you get some people who will, okay, well, the problem with America is we got too many immigrants crossing the border illegally. The problem with America is that the Jews are running everything. The problem with America is the wealthy. The problem with America is the poor dragging us down. Everybody has everybody has their who they think is the evil, who they think is the bad person, who they think is the problem with America. The problem with America starts with us. Starts with us. Okay? And I've used this example. It's been a while since I've used this, but a guy that I listen to quite a bit, and he's actually the chaplain for the Dallas Cowboys football team. His name is Tony Evans. You listen to Tony Evans. He has a podcast. He does remarkable guy, and he's a pastor. And one of the things that he says is the breakdown of America starts in the American home. It starts in the American home. And quite frankly, it starts with mom and dad. You know, it's we. You know, if a man cannot do, you know, being the support for his family. If a wife cannot be if a man can't support his wife and be the support system for his wife, if the wife can't be the support system for the husband, if there's a breakdown there, what is that? How does that breakdown go about? The breakdown then goes out into those kids. Then where do those kids go? Those kids go out into their school. Then what happens in that school? Then this school, and that's it, and it. You can just trace it out. It's like a ripple effect, on and on and on and on. And we perpetuate in our homes. We perpetuate these inaccuracies, such as, well, the Jews are this, and the blacks are that, and the whites are this, and the Republicans are that, and the Democrats are this. Instead of just saying, let's look at people for who they are. Let's look at people as human members of the human race. Okay? The difference between Travis and I is about 20 some odd years. That's the difference between us. We're both, you know, I don't even say, well, Travis is of a, you know, Kirkendall, is that, you know, German or whatever. But, you know, I could say, well, Van Beber, German background or Dutch background or whatever. Let's not, in order to get to the root of the problem, we have to look at each other as one human being communicating with another human being. I mean, it can be something as simple as a guy cuts you off in traffic. Oh, that guy is an a-hole for cutting me off in traffic. And everybody who, and, oh man, he just happened to have a Joe Biden sticker. Well, that's just typical of a Democrat. You know what I'm saying? I
But
mean, am I going
but
too
I'd like
far
to
off
say
there?
too, no, I think you're on the right track. I would just like to say too, I don't think going back to the whole cancellation and, do we give these people that make these statements a platform? I still think, okay, if a company's going to drop you because you made ignorant comments, that's
Mm-hmm.
on the company. Like the company, in my opinion, has a right to do that. If
Right.
your statements are in fact like we discussed.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think these like difficult conversations like the Lex Friedman podcast, like the Piers Morgan interview, I still think these conversations are important. I
Yes.
still think it's
Yes.
important that people hear it, listen to both sides, listens to the people challenging these individuals so that they can see it. I mean, I think just dismissing it and pretending it's not happening isn't the answer. I really do think that the difficult conversations need to happen and people need to listen and make the choices for themselves based off of what the two people present. And I think I would hope that common sense prevails, but
Yeah.
I still think it's important. I really do.
And
Don't just, I,
go ahead.
yeah.
It comes
I was just
back
saying,
to
like, give them a platform to at least
right.
get challenged on that action or what they've said.
And it comes back to the same point that we made last week. Critical thinking skills. Because here's the question that here's the question here's the question that would here's the question that bothers me the most. How many people are going to take everything that Kanye West says as the gospel truth?
Some people are, for sure. He's
Yeah.
got hardcore fans.
And that was another thing that he made a point of in his interview. We're influencers. I mean, he didn't back down from that one bit. I mean, he said that
No, he did
multiple
not.
times. And he said what really opened my eyes was that he said, people who are in my position, and he especially said people of color and people in my position, we have a large influence, and we need to get the message out. We need to do our part. And my whole thing was, okay, really, what message are you trying to get out then? You know, you can't say, well, I'm not anti-Semitic because I'm a Jew myself, and then turn around and say, but these other people are phonies, and they're screwing the system.
Yeah, you can't do that.
You can't just say okay, wait a minute. That's like saying, well, I'm not racist, but I have to scrub my nails for my weekly cross
I'm not
burnings because
racist, but
I'm not racist, but I burn enough crosses during the week that I have to scrub my nails to get all the ashes off. I mean, you can't make that. Anybody who watched Blazing Saddles got that reference, but you cannot make that statement and hope to think, well, here's my justification for doing it because I am a Jew. What? you know, that's like who was that woman a couple years ago who tried to come? She was she was convinced of the fact that she wasn't black, but she was indeed white, and that she was I forgot, but she kept on referring to herself as a white person, and I'm like,
I don't remember. But
yeah, I was like, but yeah, but but you're but you're black, you and she was saying all these racist statements against black people. And I was like, but
have you ever have you ever watched the show Atlanta?
no, I know what you're talking about though.
Donald Glover is like one of the writers and
Right.
producers of the show, and there's one there's one episode where there's this black guy who identifies as an elderly white man, and they like make fun of it. It's hilarious. It
Yeah.
just made me think of that. It's such a great show if you haven't watched it.
Donald Glover does some good stuff. So here we are again. We've made it through an hour without knowing exactly where we were going. Oh, by the way, our friend Sean tonight had some friends in town. He had to take out to the airport. We promise one day he will come back. He will come back.
He has a big announcement if you don't follow him on socials.
Yes, he does have a very,
I will let him
yeah.
tell
Oh,
the
we got to let
listeners.
him make it, but it's a step in the right direction, and it's very, very cool. We were
It's his biggest announcement to date, for
yes,
sure.
yes, and it is. We're like
It will. This is gonna break the internet.
it. Yeah. Oh man, it's going to break the internet, and we are. I want to tell you something. We are so happy for Sean and all the progress he is making, and we need to have him on for another recap show. Thank you all for sticking with us tonight. I know some of you were like, "Oh, I can't stomach Kanye," so. And we understand that if that's not your cup of tea, you can, we'll let you have a pass on one episode.
We had to address this one.
We had
Is this
this was
something?
Travis. Okay, what are we doing? I was like, man, we got to talk about the Kanye thing. We can't let this go on too much longer without putting our 10 cents in about. But yeah, definitely, we do want to talk about Uncle Joe in the near future. Man, he's been saying some things that wow, but we will address him and cousin Donnie sometime. So, yeah, and I didn't tell you this, Travis, but we did have a request that we need to do another sports show soon. We need to have the boys on from
A sports show?
yeah from the boys from Four Deep or Three Deep Sports. Um, Zach Evans and Josh
All right.
or not Josh Daniel Harvey. We haven't had the boys on in a while, so we're going to try to get them on in the near future. We're going to again try to get some other folks on. And one more shout out to one of our big listeners. Congratulations to Matthew Dugan Chewy, who got engaged over the weekend. Our buddy Chewy, who listens
Did he
from
really?
yes, he did. He
Oh,
got engaged
congrats.
over
I
the
didn't know
weekend.
that.
So shout out to our boy Chewy. Congratulations to him joining the rank of us married folks here before long. I'm glad that he's taken that step. That's a big, huge step. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Please visit our sponsors, American Traditional Coffee, Van Beber and Son DJ Services. Mention Van Beber and Sons DJ Service when you give us a contact. Mention Voice of Reason. We will give you a 10% discount off of your next service We already have 4 dates booked for 2023. I'm excited about that. And so mention us. Go check out American Traditional Coffee on their website. They have great products there as well. Anything I'm missing, Travis?
No.
So, oh, I think I lost. I think I lost Travis. Well, that's okay. Anyway, join us next week, and until then, thank you for joining us. This is the Voice of Reason. My name is Andy Van Beber. Have a great rest of your week.